So that's what the relative pronouns are doing, and they're called relative pronouns because they don't have any meaning without the context of what's called their antecedent. Okay, so because they are a pronoun and they're standing in place for another noun, the noun they're standing in place for, whoops, I didn't mean to go through that. Sorry, it's kind of hard to write and look at the screen at the same time. Oh no, okay. Anyway, so they're standing in place for their antecedent. So if you have a sentence like, Jeremy, who is a student, studies Latin, our relative pronoun here is who, and the antecedent, or the word that who is standing in place for here, is Jeremy. So it only has meaning relative to its antecedent, relative to the noun it's standing in for. This is the antecedent. This is who we are actually talking about here. Okay, Jeremy is the who in this sentence. So if you take out who is a student, Jeremy studies Latin is still a complete sentence and it still makes sense. This little thing right here, the little clause that contains our relative pronoun here, I'll use a different color so it's not as muddied. This little thing right here, this clause that has, this clause within a complete sentence here, this is called a relative clause. And you will see them all over the place in Latin. Cicero loved to use relative clauses. Like 90% of what Caesar wrote in the Gallic Wars and even into talking about going to battle the Celts and everything is in relative clauses. So what a relative clause does is that it contains your relative pronoun, and it also gives you a little bit of extra information about the antecedent or something else in the sentence. Let me admit these guys. Okay. So if we go back to our parts of speech and we mark everything in this sentence. So Jeremy, that's a noun. Who, that's a pronoun. Is, that's a verb. A is an article. It's not, doesn't exist in Latin. So we're just going to kind of fold that into the noun that it is with right here. Noun, studies, that's a verb. In Latin, that's another noun. So often what you'll have with your relative clauses is that the sometimes you'll have things like this where you just have like a legit nominative predicate or predicate nominative. Because so here's a subject, it's standing in for the subject, and within its own clause, it is the subject. Subject is thing. That is a nom here. Nominative. Nominative, that's a predicate nominative. Our verb here. Jeremy is the subject, he'd be in the nominative. This would be his verb, the action he is doing. And then Latin here. This would be our object. Okay. So it's not always going to be the case that the pronoun will agree with the antecedent in case. It will always agree in gender and number. But the thing about the relative clause is that it is its own clause, okay? So if we had a sentence like, so Sarah, so with whom I went to school. Say teaches Latin. Okay, did that all fit on there? Yeah. So in the previous sentence, Jeremy and who were both in the nominative. Here, Sarah's in the nominative. Sarah is the subject. So nominative. But here inside the relative clause, we have with whom, and we know from practicing our noun cases that when you have something like with, by with, you are in the ablative. Okay, so when we translate this into Latin, so Sarah is singular and feminine, but she's in the nominative, our with whom here, that would be singular and feminine, but instead of being in the nominative to agree with Sarah, it would be in the ablative, because within its own clause here, it's giving you information that can only be conveyed in the ablative. Okay, so it's just a little bit of information up front to kind of prime your brains and let you know how we're going to be using like the relative pronoun before we get into the forms. Okay, so I'm going to pull something up here because with relative pronouns, we also have the who versus whom. And if you haven't had a good explainer in English classes about when to use who versus whom, that can be kind of confusing. Learning Latin actually kind of really clears that up, which is fantastic. And I have a quick little video that is also very good at clearing this up. Let me make sure that this will play the sound. Did you guys get sound on that one? Or no? Let me share it quick. Ooh, there we go. If there's no sound on it, let me know.
I don't hear it.
I don't either.
But I think there's like a button you can press that says share computer audio.
No, volume. Okay, hold on. Let me take it back real quick. I had this problem earlier. Let me real quick get that. Ah, found it.
What I really want, honestly, Michael, is for you to know it so that you can communicate it to the people here, to your clients, to whomever.
Oh, okay.
What?
It's whoever, not whomever.
No, it's whomever.
No, whomever is never actually right.
Well, sometimes it's right.
Michael is right. It's a made-up word used to trick students.
No, actually, whomever is the formal version of the word.
Obviously, it's a real word, but I don't know when to use it correctly.
Not a native speaker.
I know what's right, but I'm not going to say because you're all jerks who didn't come see my band last night.
Do you really know which one is correct?
I don't know.
It's whom when it's the object of the sentence and who when is the subject.
That sounds right.
Well, it sounds right, but is it?
How did Ryan use it as an object?
As an object.
Ryan used me as an object.
Is he right about that?
How did he use it again?
It was, Ryan wanted Michael, the subject, to explain the computer system, the object.
Thank you.
To whomever, meaning us, the indirect object, which is the correct usage of the word.
No one asks you anything ever, so whomever's name is Toby, why don't you take a letter opener and stick it into your skull?
Hey, this doesn't matter, and I don't even care.
Love that example. It's just so good. Very succinct. Well, not succinct, but very, very, very good nonetheless. Okay. So just like for third person, he, she, it, relative pronouns have gender. So we have to contend with singular and plural and also gender. But a lot of the forms are the same across gender. So it's not so many forms. It's not as like scary as it seems. We're going to do one sheet that has excuse me, a singular on it and one that has plural just because I don't want to run out of room. Okay, so this is going to be singular. So we're going to have our nominative forms, our genitive forms, oopsies, our dative forms, our accusative forms, and our ablative forms. Oh, maybe if the ablative pen will cooperate. There we go. Okay. And then we're going to have masculine, feminine, and neuter. All right. So in the masculine, nominative, singular, I'll just go like this to kind of make it easier to see between them. So we have qui, we have quai, quai, and quad. So this is just who in the masculine, feminine, and neuter. And then in the genitive, all three are going to have the same form. So quies, quies, quies. Oops, U in there. Ooh. Got that second U. And this is, whoops, of whom. In the dative, again, all three will have the same form, qui, qui, qui. And this is to, for whom. In the accusative, this is going to look a little bit more like third declension. So masculine will be quem. Feminine will look a little bit more like first declension with quam. And then neuter is going to repeat its nominative form, quad. And this is whom. And then in the ablative, all three are going to look more like first, second declension. So quo, qua, quo. And this is by, with, whom. There. Okay, so those are our singular forms, masculine, feminine, and nominative, or neuter, masculine, feminine, and neuter. So qui, quai, quad, who, quies, 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 of whom, qui, to, for whom, quem, quam, quad, whom, quo, qua, quo, by, with, whom, right? I'll give you one sec here, and then I will start on the plural. Let's slide over to the plural. And if you didn't get all those down, I am recording this one, so you guys will have the link to it. And also, provide other stuff for you to practice this. And if you need to, I can always just pull it back up at the very end. So this is going to be the relative pronouns. In the plural. Okay, so we're going to have our nominative, our genitive, our dative, our accusative, and our ablative. So we have our masculine, our feminine, and our neuter. Okay. So if we're going to start with our masculine here. So the masculine singular for the relative and the masculine plural look the same? And then how will I tell them apart? Because remember, this is a relative pronoun and it requires an antecedent. So you will see you'll see the antecedent either previously in the sentence or previously in the text, okay? The feminine is same form as well. And again, the context will be within the sentence or statement itself. So you'll know whether or not like, uh-oh, this relative pronoun, am I singular or am I plural? And then the neuter, as a neuter often does, has a feminine appearing form. So this is who, but plural. Okay, so English does this too. If you think of, I'm talking about a group of people, those boys over there, who? We don't have in English a different word for who singular versus who plural, nor do we have a different word for whom singular versus whom plural. Okay, for our genitive plural, the forms are going to look like first, second declension. So you have quorum, so that Q-U, and then the O-R-U-M, so that should look familiar from second declension. Quorum, same thing, that should look familiar from second declension, Q-U-A-R-U-M, and then quorum. Quorum, quorum, quorum. And this is of whom. We'll do it like that, plural. I guess you can't really see that one. Oh, sorry, guys. Okay, and then the dative looks like third declension. All three in the dative will have the same form. Quib, whoop, that's the brown. Whoops, where is my purple? Quibus. Q-U-I-B-U-S, quibus. Quibus, quibus. So this is to, for, whom, plural. Okay. To, for, whom, plural. Accusative, that's going to look again like first, second declension. Quos, the OS in the ending like we have in second declension, Q-U-O-S. In the feminine, quos. And in the neuter, like so many things, neuter is going to repeat the nominative form, quae. Quos, quos, quae. And that's just whom, plural. And then in your ablative, we're going to repeat the dative form. So again, quibus, looking again like third declension, quibus, quibus. Okay, and that is, oh, no, not brown. By, with, whom, plural. Okay, I'll hold that up there and give you guys a second to take that down if you need to. So in college, because this was a foreign language that we were either majoring in or having to take, it was an everyday class. And so when we learned this, we had to practice it with a chant. Qui, qui, quad, quiz, 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 qui, 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 quam, quam, quad, all the way through. Not gonna make you do that, but what I am gonna do is I am gonna make you watch a cheesy video that sets it to song, because that's just a fun way to learn. And when we learn via music, we tend to learn it, I don't know if that's better or if it's just, you know, a way. But here, let me pull it up. Make sure that it is. Yes, the computer sound is shared. Hooray.
Quick quack quote, yes, yes, yes. Quick quack quack, quam, quam, quote. Quote, quote, quote. That's a relative pronoun in singular. Now get ready for the plural. Quick quack quack, quorum, quorum, quorum. Quivers, 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 quos, quos, quite. Quivers, 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 that's the relative pronoun. Who's who? Which four things? One more time. Quick, quack, quote. Quiz, 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 yes. Quick, quick, quick. Quam, quam, quote. Quote, quack, quote. That's the relative pronoun. Singular. Now get ready for the plural. Quick, quack, quack, quorum, quorum, quorum. Quivers, 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 quos, quas, quite. Quivers, 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 yeah, spell it from now. Go home and learn it as best as you can. Don't forget the rule of agreement between the relative pronoun and its antecedent. The relative pronoun gets its gender and number from its antecedent, but the case of the relative pronoun is determined by its own grammatical use inside of its own relative clause. And don't forget the relative pronoun with cum. Attach the preposition cum, meaning with, to the end of the relative pronoun as follows. Quocum, masculine, with whom. Quacum, with whom, feminine singular. Or if it's neuter, quocum, with which, that's neuter singular. In the plural, both masculine and feminine would be quibuscum, with whom. And also for neuter, same form, but different meaning, with which.
Fun, right? Very, very catchy. Okay, so that is the relative pronoun. Qui, quad. Okay, so how do we use this? What would it look like in the text? Let me pull something up here. You can have things like, let's see, let me grab an example here for you. Oh no, all my examples here are interrogative. So instead of looking at examples that, we can, unless is that one? These are all going to be a little over your level. So we'll just talk, we'll do a quick intro to interrogative instead, because those examples will be a bit too much Latin at this point. Okay, so we have relative. Okay, so now let's talk about interrogative, because they are very similar. So when you hear interrogative, you think what? Interrogation, and interrogations are what? They're questions. Okay, so interrogative, where relative pronouns are kind of explanations within the text, like a little bit more information on the antecedent. Interrogative pronouns are they're question words. oh my goodness, excuse me. So instead of like, Sarah, with whom I went to school, you would have something like, who is Sarah, or with whom did I go to school? Okay, so these are, rather than explanatory, these are questioning pronouns. So with a relative, you can have like who and which, but not, so that's a which more like, I keep saying explain, excuse me, explaining versus questioning, but it's kind of what it is. Like, you can have which used as like, which box has, has toys in it. And this is a question. Here we're using which as an interrogatory and an interrogative pronoun. And then you could have the box, which has toys in it. ... Int in it. And which is acting as a relative here. Here you're asking a question. Here you are explaining. So this is more info on your antecedent. Now, do interrogative pronouns have an antecedent? Sort of. They have more of an implied antecedent. So when we say in English, which box has toys in it, which box is it that has toys in it, is the kind of more formal, more kind of complete thing that we mean, but things get shortened and other words drop out but are understood. Okay, so where you explicitly need to have an antecedent with a relative, an interrogative does not need it, but is understood to be there. Okay, so what do the forms look like? They look pretty much, the same as the relative, with a couple of little differences here. So let me pull up the relative again. So where our relative is qui, qui, quad, your interrogative is, let me give you the nominative here, is in the masculine quis and in the feminine quis and in the neuter quid. Okay, then masculine, feminine, neuter. So this would be like who, what, which. Okay, but in the genitive, again, all forms are quis. So of whom, of what, of which. Okay, and the dative, where's my purple pen for dative? In the dative, your form is the same again, qui, for all three. So again, 2 for whom, what, which, as a question. And then in your accusative, both masculine and feminine are going to be quem rather than quem, quam, quid, or quem, quam, quad, which would be the pronoun or the relative. It's quem, quem, quid. So which or whom as a question. And then in your ablative, there's both masculine and feminine will be quo, not quo, qua, quo. Just all three are quo. So by, with, whom. Okay. So where's my relative pronouns? So we look at the difference between the two. So interrogative, quis, quis, quid. Relative, qui, qui, quad. Same in genitive, same in dative. In accusative, everything, or both masculine and feminine, quem, quem, and then the neuter, of course, repeats its nominative form. And then in the ablative, they're all quo. Again, oh, how do I tell in context? Well, it will be, there'll be a question rather than just a sentence or a statement. And you won't have an antecedent that you need to refer back to. That's how you'll be able to tell an interrogative from a relative. Okay, let's quickly look at the plural forms. And then we'll be done. Okay. So in the plural, in the nominative, there we go. Your masculine is going to be qui. It's going to be the same as it is for the relative. So, but masculine, feminine, neuter. Okay. So both relative and interrogative will have qui. Same for feminine, qui. So relative and interrogative will have qui. And then your neuter will again be qui, just like it is in the relative. Okay, so the plural nominative forms for interrogative and for relative are the same. So plural who, except for now it's a, not whom. For now it's a question, who, what, which. Okay, in your genitive, the forms will be the same as they are in your relative. So quorum, quorum, quorum. Oops. Of whom? Plural? As a question. And then your dative and your ablative will be the same. They'll still be the quibus for all three. So, to, for, whom, plural.
The genitive feminine is quorum, not quam, right? Sorry.
No, you're fine. Quarum. So the masculine Quorum. Sorry, I got a little bit messy with my writing there. Is that
No,
is that okay? Is it clear?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. So your data forms are the same, all three, like it was for relative, and it's the same form for relative. Again, we're just looking for, when you're trying to tell them apart in the text, you'll be looking for things like an antecedent or a question mark. If you have a question mark, odds are you're using an interrogative, okay? Accusative is the same. Sorry, not the same. It's more of a third declension looking. So quest, oops, goodness. Right, is that the one I was looking for? No, that's not the one. Sorry, that one is the same. Thinking of something else. Quos, quas, and then quae, because that is the neuter over here. It repeats, so whom. And then in the ablative, again, same as the dative, okay? So all three. All right. So we will move on with more of these, and I will find some simpler examples that we can use on Wednesday, okay?